Hello and welcome to the Sound of Hyperlight Drifter Part 4. My name is Akash Thakkar and I am the sound designer on Hyperlight Drifter. And I've been working on this game for about 2.5 years, maybe a little bit longer. And as of this recording, the game is out. So you can buy it on Steam, GOG, and some other places as well. So I'm going to link where you can grab it in the description below. And if you haven't seen any of the other parts of the series, there's 4 so far at the time of this recording, and you can just click the annotations to watch those, or you can go ahead and look in the description to see where those are as well. They're all modular, you don't have to watch them in any particular order, but they all detail something different about the sound of the game. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I work with animations. So some of you have asked about workflow and what it's like to work with the team and how I time my sound effects to various animations that will be going on in the game. And the answer is pretty simple, thankfully. So when I'm working on the game and I have something that is very animation specific, there's something that I really need to time perfectly in terms of sounds. Has to start at the right time, has to stop at the right time, and everything in the middle has to work with whatever's happening on screen. All I do is go into the editor we have, play the game, record it with Fraps, and then export that as a video and throw it into Logic Pro. So today, I'm going to be showing you a demonstration of how I made the tower effects in the game. So basically, as you're playing, you need to find these towers. They're very important for your progress in the game. And I'm not going to say anything else. I don't want to give out any spoilers. So when you get these towers, they basically allow you to keep going further and further in the game. And I needed to make something that was spacey, mechanical, deep, and unique. So we didn't want any generic effects or anything like that for this, or any effect in the game, really. So when it comes to doing something like this, I have to be very careful to make sure everything is timed just right. So I have a video here of the actual tower coming out of the ground. And what I'll do is play it for you without any sound whatsoever so you can see what it looks like, and then I'll show you how the layers were built on top of one another. So, pretty simple, just a big, rocky sort of cube thing coming out of the ground. But, of course, we wanted things to sound unique, and what I'm going to do is show you that I use multiple layers for every single sound, meaning every sound isn't just one file thrown in and called good, it's multiple sounds playing at the same time to kind of compound on top of one another and make the entire package sound unique, bassy, heavy, mechanical, which is what I was going for. So I'm going to play each layer for you individually of each kind of segment of these tower sounds. So first up, I'll play this bass layer here. So really bassy, super rumbly, just something to kind of lay low underneath all of the other sounds so that it adds some character and it adds some girth and some impact to this thing coming out of the ground. So next up is a bunch of stones being scraped and rubbed together, essentially, to give it that friction-y sort of sound. So again, pretty straightforward. And the third layer is probably my favorite. This is where the uniqueness of the sound kind of comes in. It's a bunch of gears and motors being abused heavily, and it's used to, I think, good effect for this sound. Very mechanical, lots of gears turning. I really like that sound, so it added a good amount of character to this. And the last layer is actually some more rumble. It's a little higher pitched than the first one, and it adds kind of some middle-low frequencies that, again, add character, add girth. You may not notice it right away, but it eventually kind of adds up with all of these other layers and makes things sound cool. So yeah, just another bassy sort of thrum. And altogether, the tower coming out of the ground sounds like this. And you can hear there's a lot of reverb on it, which is super intentional. I love reverb. I love this EOS audio damage plugin. I use it all the time. It's probably the most used plugin I have on this entire game, this entire project. So I add reverb to it to make it more impactful, that even when this thing stops, it's still resonating, it's still reverberating. This is a big deal, essentially. So next up in this kind of tower cycle, we have the tower stopping. So whenever it kind of comes to a stop and the screen shakes. So we'll go through each of these layers as well. So kind of a locking into place sound with some sci-fi sort of beeps going on in the background. Next up. Some more locking sort of sounds, but much lower pitch. And I used a pitch shifter plugin quite liberally for this one and for basically all of these sounds. And it adds this kind of muffledness that I really, really like. It makes it sound really dark and just kind of gross in a very pleasant way. There we go. A third kind of locking in sound. So you can see that I'm layering similar sounds on top of one another to give it more impact. And lastly, some sci-fi sort of door shutting down, power shutting down sort of sound. Again, to add that uniqueness to it, similar to Tower Rise Layer 3 that I played earlier. That was probably the most unique out of all of them. So, altogether, it sounds like this. Now, I'm going to play the Tower Rising and then the Tower Stop back to back so you can hear what it sounds like together. Heavy, boomy, bassy, impactful, exactly what we were going for. It really turned out well, and I remember the director, Alex Preston, saying he wants to marry these sounds, so mission accomplished. So next, we have a kind of jingle that plays. So when the tower is done moving, essentially, it's a sound effect that lets the gamer know, hey, you did something cool. Excellent. Good job. So what I did for this, actually, was I took some of Disaster Piece's music that he wrote for the game and just modified the hell out of it because I thought it worked really well. So here's the original bit of music, and for those of you who have seen any of our trailers, you'll probably recognize it. So I used that as basically my core for turning it into a little sort of fanfare, a little jingle. So I turned it from that into this. And for those of you who are audio people, I know it's clipping down there, but I just cranked it up so you can hear everything clearly. So I turned this original file into something more mellow, something more bassy, but you can kind of still tell that it is definitely musical, and you can tell it comes from the same sound source. So what I did to do that was use one of my favorite features in Logic, and that's flex time. So what you can do is turn on flex time. I use tempo phone mode for those of you who really use Logic a lot. And you can basically stretch and shrink your sound. You can time stretch it and time shrink it. So you can make something that's really long all of a sudden sound a lot shorter without creating too many crazy artifacts during the process. But sometimes that's what you want, so you can go really, really crazy and make it really small or make it really big. So what I did was shrink it down to this size, essentially. You can see down here, this is the bounced version of it. And then I added a ton of effects to it. So there's that reverb again, some crazy EQ curves that I'd never use on live instruments, but for sound design, fantastic, great. One of my favorite new plugins that I've recently started using, which is Soundtoys Crystallizer, just makes things sound really crazy. It's a great, strange delay plugin. And some pitch shifting, which is so common and so useful. So I did that for this initial layer here, and what you get is this. And it kind of comes back as that nice, deep, bassy thrum. And what I basically did was export this, cut out that bassy thrum, and make it happen sooner. So this last layer is that exact same sound, just brought over to the left a little bit so you don't have to wait so long for it to come back in. And I got rid of a little of the bass because, frankly, it was a bit much. But that's the essential technique to making this sound is, hey, take Disaster Piece's music that he wrote for the game, or just a little bit of it, and modify the hell out of it, and hopefully make something cool out of it. And lastly, this is a sound I'm really proud of, which is the tower pulse. So after the tower comes out of the ground, it basically pulses purple, just to kind of add some flavor and some cool ambience. It just has this big purple light that goes off. So every time that happens, this is the sound that plays. So again, super bassy, super deep. That's what we were going for these towers. So I'll play again, layer by layer, so you can hear how it's all made up. Some nice sci-fi electric sounds. There are those deep bassy impacts again with lots of reverb. Super effective for this sort of thing. And there's the meat of it, a big, boomy, huge impact that's pitch shifted down. And lastly, that's what's giving that tone to it overall. So all together, it makes something heavy and kind of ominous and really, really bassy. And again, I added a ton of reverb to it, so it lingers and has kind of more of an impact, letting the player know this is a big deal. I'm not saying you need to add reverb on every single sound, but for things that are meant to signal to the player, hey, something big happened or something big is happening, it certainly helps. It creates that sense of space. So that's it for this video. If you like this one or you're just more interested in sound design, you can watch the other parts in the series. And I also have a series on sound design for those of you who want to get into this field called the 5-Minute Sound Designer, where I break down sound design in 5 minutes or less. So check those out. And if you're interested in making your career in video games, sign up for my newsletter, because I give out weekly tips and info on how to make a career in this industry and how to get actually paid for it, which is pretty important. So with that, I'm signing off for now. Please enjoy the game. Let me know what you think. You can contact me through Twitter or my website, which is in the description below, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much.